Assalamu alaikum. Dear students, this is me Atiq Ahmad. Today we are going to study the topic emergence of cell theory. Today we are going to study the historical developments which ultimately led to the development of cell theory. Now all these developments are basically based on the advancement in the microscopy field. So continuous development in the microscopy basically enable the scientist to study the cells of organisms in detail, which ultimately led to the formulation of cell theory. Now, what were those developments in the microscopy which enabled the scientist to study the cells in detail? Those developments were basically development in the lenses as well as the light source. So initially the lenses were made of glass, and the light source which was used there was the normal visible light. But later on the development in the lenses resulted into the development of magnetic lenses, and the light source was changed from the normal visible light to the electron beam. Electron beam is used in the light microscope. So today we will study the historical developments. Today we will study a bit history, that how slowly and gradually the biology progressed towards the development of the formulation of the cell theory. Now we will move towards the teaching points. So in 1665, Robert Hooke, that was an English scientist, he for the first time observed cell with a small microscope, and that microscope was just 30x. It means that the magnification of that microscope was just 30 times, and this basically made the way towards the development or in other words the formulation of cell theory. Robert Hooke basically observed the cork cells, the wood cells, through his microscope. Around the same time, means around the 1665, a 300 times more powerful microscope was developed by Leeuwenhoek, and he observed small unicellular creatures in water, and he named those small unicellular creatures as animalcules. So basically what Leeuwenhoek did, that he took sample of water and he observed that sample of water under his microscope, which was 300 times more powerful, and he observed that there are small moving unicellular organisms, and he named those as animalcules. Later on, now we know that inside the pond water, lake water, these small unicellular creatures, these are basically amoeba, paramecium, and various other protists. But that time that was not known, so he named those small unicellular creatures in the water as animalcules, because they were moving, so they were animal-like, so that's why he named them as animalcules. Now in the history, another scientist in 1809, Lamarck concluded that all living organisms are made of cellular tissues. This was a bit further development, that Lamarck suggested that all living organisms are made of cellular tissues, means that cells combine together to form tissues. So that was another idea in biology, that cells combine together to form tissues. In 1831, another scientist, Robert Brown, described that nucleus is the central organelle, the central part of the cell, and it is a spherical body, it is a rounded body. Then later on in 1838, another scientist, Schleiden, claimed that all plants were made of cells. He claimed that all plants whether small or large. They all are made of cells. Then another scientist, Schwann, he proved that animals were also made of cells. So the Schleden in 1838 he did experiments on plants, and he observed the plant cells and claimed that all plant cells were made of cells. And 1 year later, another scientist, Schwann, he experimented on the animals, and he also proved that animals are also made of cells just like plants. Then later on, 1 year later, in 1840, Jane Evangelista gave the name protoplasm to the cell contents. This scientist basically described the internal structure of the cells, and he described that the internal content of the cell, that is protoplasm. He gave this name protoplasm to the internal content of the cell. Now we know that the internal content consists of cytoplasm and various organelles, including the central organelle, that is the nucleus. In 1855, another scientist, Rudolf Virchow, he gave the idea that every cell comes from another cell. That was basically the idea of cell division, that new cells arises from the already existing cells. So this is basically the cell division idea which was proposed by Virchow. In 1962, another scientist, Louis Pasteur, provided experimental proof for Virchow's idea of cell division by demonstrating cell division in the bacteria. Now, in 1855, Virchow gave the idea that every cell comes from the pre-existing cells, and that was the concept of cell division. But after around 1 century, more than 1 century, after 107 years, another scientist, Pasteur, experimentally proved that bacteria produce new copies, new bacteria, through the process of cell division. So he basically demonstrated the process of cell division in bacteria, that how the bacterial cell divide and produce new cells. So he concluded that this is basically due to the division of cell. All these historical developments, starting from Robert Hooke till Louis Pasteur, these all basically led to the emergence of cell theory. Because if you observe all these historical developments, slowly and gradually all scientists contributed in their time towards the cell theory. Someone observed the cells with a less advanced microscope, someone observed a comparatively powerful microscope, someone observed the plant cells, someone observed the animal cells, someone gave the idea of the nucleus, and similarly someone gave the idea of the protoplasm. So after all, they all contributed towards the understanding of cells. And later on, then the two scientists, the Schleden and Schwann, they proposed the cell theory, which we will study inshallah in the next video lecture. Now we will move towards the images, and this is basically the historical development shown in a step-by-step manner, starting from ancient Greeks, then 1665 Hooks. He observed cork cells, then Leeuwenhoek's. He observed single cell organisms, then Snow, then Pasteur, then Fracastoro. These are various scientists, step by step they contributed towards the cell theory. And these are the pictures, the portraits of those scientists. Again, this is another image which shows the timeline of cellular discovery, major events in the cell biology and imaging. So that's enough for today. Next time inshallah we will study the actual cell theory. See you next time. Take care, dears.